the group is really important, and there's so many of us. And I just think it's important to say that there's trans people on this group. There are, all different types of people who just want to make sure that kids are getting comprehensive mental health care, and that we're concerned that that's not what's happening. And this is the only area that it seems to really be going off the rails. So
yeah, I agree.
It's the only area in
you can't talk about
healthcare where you are so bullied by other professionals when you raise concerns. In no other area of mental health care would such uncollegial and unprofessional behavior be tolerated, much less accepted.
Hey, everybody. I caught myself 2 amazing guests today. I'm super excited about this conversation. We've been talking about it for a while, but before I move forward, I would love for you all to just like this, subscribe to the channel if you can, because it's just blowing up. And these kind of conversations are extremely important. I'm really, really honored that these 2 are sitting with me today, because as you all know, I'm huge on mental health care, and therapy was the reason I sit here today as a very healthy human being and 32 years into my transition. So with that, I have 2 great people from an organization called Therapy First, and I'd like for Paul and Sara to introduce themselves a little bit, and then we'll move forward about what we're going to talk about. So, hey, guys and girls.
Hey, Buck. Thanks for having us.
Right on.
So my name's Paul Garcia-Ryan. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in private practice in New York City, and I'm the board president of Therapy First. Therapy First is a US-based nonprofit organization that advocates for developmentally informed psychotherapy as a first-line intervention for youth gender dysphoria, as opposed to medicalization as a first-line intervention, and has a international professional association of over 300 mental health professionals who are concerned about the current state of mental health care that's administered to gender dysphoric youth.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Paul. Sara.
Yeah, I'm Sara. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, also in New York. I actually was kind of one of the pioneers of bringing, I guess you would call, gender-affirming care to minors. We didn't call it back then. Yeah. And I started to get really concerned about the quickness that we were just handing these medical interventions off to children. And that was kind of a big reason why I went to Therapy First, was just to find a place that was caring more about what was going on for gender nonconforming kids, that wasn't straight to medical intervention and recommending irreversible interventions.
Fantastic. You know, that's how you all know me, how I feel about that. I don't believe in trans kids, by the way. I don't want to call them trans kids. I guess kids have dysphoria, no doubt.
Absolutely.
I was a kid, but to shove them into that space so quickly is actually disturbing for me to see as an elder and an older person in this community. So I very first want to say thank you. I appreciate the work you're doing to help kids find their space. And, you know, medicalization to me should be the last resort. It should not be the first thing we should be doing. So with that, that's why these people are very, very, very important to me in the work that I do as well, because I think helping kids navigate a space where they won't have to transition is the ultimate goal as far as I'm concerned. So with that, something came out, I think it was about a couple weeks ago, that was brought to my attention. It wasn't brought to my attention from YouTube. It was brought to my attention from somebody else. And when I saw it, and when I saw what was happening in regards to Therapy First, I was actually blown away. Mm-hmm. And so first off, I was upset because I don't believe what they're saying is true. And secondly, it's very biased. I mean, it's obvious. You can just tell they have a one-track way of thinking about this. Now, with that, I want to talk to you 2 about it first. Or would you like me to bring it up first, or on the screen, and we can look at it?
Sure. Maybe we can watch it together.
Okay, great. So I'm going to bring this up, and I'm bringing it within the YouTube app, so that we can have commentary on it, because I think it's a very important video that that to me it instills fear in people, as opposed to
it instills. What I think it does is it puts out some scare tactics, or instills fear in young people.
Great. That's
and it also contributes to a culture of fear within the mental health profession amongst professionals already who are trying to provide thoughtful, developmentally informed care to young people. So I'm seeing this as part of a whole issue that's happening in the field of mental health, where there's a lot of bullying that's occurring towards clinicians who are raising concerns, who are vocal about the evidence base for youth medicalization for gender dysphoria in minors as being weak. And that to me is really upsetting, because what I think it will ultimately lead to is fewer and fewer really thoughtful and skilled mental health professionals being inclined to work with this population, thereby leaving these young people with less high quality mental health care available to them.
Yeah, excellent. I agree with everything you said. And if you don't start with mental health, what are you doing? Why would you start with medicalization first? And that's why I don't believe in affirmation therapy. Those two words do not belong in the same sentence. It's like absurd.
Yeah.
So, and I'm laughing so I don't cry, by the way. So let me bring this up and then let's get into this, because it's super important. Okay, here we go.
It's very easy to hold on to some sort of fantasy about what's going to make you into a happy person. But overall, it doesn't change the level of contentment and satisfaction.
This is a gender conversion therapist trying to convince me that I'm not trans. He's practicing gender exploration therapy, a new anti-trans strategy sweeping across the country, spearheaded by a fringe organization called Therapy First. The word exploration is intentionally misleading. Exploring one's gender identity is crucial. I did that for 3 months myself before getting my own surgery last year. But this organization has an agenda. Their own website says gender-affirming medical care should be avoided. Their own board calls being transgender hysteria.
Oh my God.
I wanted to see this manipulation in action. So I went undercover and met twice with a therapist who practices this gender exploration therapy to see what goes on inside these sessions.
So, tell me.
I told him what I told my own therapist last year, that I've never really felt like a woman and I'm thinking about getting top surgery so my body reflects how I feel inside. At first, he appeared neutral.
And there are people who proceed with transitioning and then do have regrets. And there are people who proceed with transitioning so they're happy with that, not happy before.
He assured me.
I think of myself as trying to help you make a decision for yourself.
Which sounds great, but here's where the manipulation comes in.
I'm working with a young woman who has been seriously depressed her whole life. She now is happy about transitioning, but is still extremely depressed.
Think about it this way. You want to go swimming, and you ask the lifeguard if it's safe. He says it's up to you, but did you hear about the person who got bit by a shark? You're probably not going to go swimming. So listen, as this guy brings up another transgender person he allegedly knows who's unhappy.
She's surprised, troubled that people have a reaction to it, and that people see her as a trans woman rather than as a woman.
After he warned me about these two specific people, he started to threaten societal backlash.
It's naive to think that there are going to be no social consequences. There is going to be nothing to deal with. You may have seen it online. People have got very strong reactions to being misgendered.
I told him I really don't care what other people think. So he pivoted. Is my desire to transition really just a sign of underlying depression?
It's very easy to hold on to some sort of fantasy about what's going to make you into a happy person. But overall, it doesn't change the level of contentment and satisfaction.
I told him that no, overall, I'm actually a pretty happy person, especially after cutting my hair.
You're happy with it the way it is now, and you have no intentions of regrowing it, it sounds like.
No.
But you kept it until you were 28 or 29. Do you think that's something to wonder about?
What do you mean?
It seems sort of incongruous that you would have kept long hair for as long as you did. So I'm curious about it.
Curious? The curiosity ended when he asked me if I was happy with my haircut. Telling me it's incongruous with the way I live, that's an opinion with an agenda.
Do you ever miss feeling and looking more feminine? Do you ever feel uncomfortable dressing, looking the way you do?
I don't.
You don't?
I feel more comfortable presenting more masculine.
After that comment, I had to leave. I honestly was feeling pretty frustrated and uncomfortable. But you know who doesn't get to leave? Thousands of trans kids and adults sent to these sessions to be talked out of who they know they are inside. For a list of gender-affirming resources and therapists, you can start by visiting Made.
Okay, let's get into this now because that is quite upsetting to me. So let me just say a couple things, and I want to talk to you. I want to open the floor to you guys. To me, this person was manipulating us into thinking that this therapist had an agenda. This therapist was doing exactly what a therapist should do: push back on you. They should not affirm everything you say when you walk in. They're supposed to do those things. What that therapist did was actually the best thing you could do. It makes you think. She did not want to think about why she was sitting there and maybe why she cut her hair at 28. And all of a sudden, so as far as I'm concerned, that therapist was straight up, right on. He's old school like me. That's how my therapist was. It made me think about, why do you think you're a man? That's what a therapist is supposed to do. So that being said, I just wanted to say those things before I open the floor to you too. So why don't you give us what you think's going on here?
Yeah, so what comes to mind for me is just recalling my becoming aware that this had been posted online, because so how that ended up playing out is I ended up getting some text messages from some members of Therapy First. And these clinicians, many of them I'm in touch with regularly. And some of them sent me text messages saying, wait a minute, I recognize this person. This person reached out to me. I did a consult with this person. We actually did a video consult where they came saying that they were seeking therapy. And so I believe that, this person reached out to 6 of our clinicians, including this particular therapist. And at least 3 of them, or 2 or 3, met with her.
Okay.
And the others sensed that she was reaching out not in good faith, so they didn't meet with her. And what I think happened is she was searching for a therapist that was going to look most problematic. The one that sort of ticked all the boxes for problematic therapist in our current cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah.
She met with, we have a lot of different kinds of therapists in Therapy First that practice, that have a lot of different kinds of styles, that embody a lot of different demographics: young therapists, older therapists, therapists who are women, therapists who are men, therapists who are trans, therapists who are gay, therapists who are straight. And this particular therapist that she ended up choosing was an old school psychoanalyst who practices in, a different way that I might practice than Sara might practice. But, I think that she recognized that it may look like,
That's
it
right.
may sort of like be easy to frame him as looking problematic in that video.
Well, can I say something before you go, Sarah? I'm also going to say this to everybody out there. Editing. Don't forget about editing. We don't know what that whole video looked like. They got to pick and choose the parts that they felt as you put. That's how you make a story.
Yeah,
That's how editing works, right?
And it said that it was the first or second session, but we actually don't know if that's the case, and we're not really sure what questions she posed for those responses.
Excellent.
For me, my approach is the first couple of sessions, I'm not really talking much about gender or regret or possible risk. I'm really just getting a history from that particular person, getting to know who they are as an individual. But of course, I can't really avoid the pointed questions that they ask, right? So if they're asking me these questions about where the evidence is, what the risk is, that's something that I'm then going to engage in good faith.
Well, I think that's the problem that really offends me, right? Is that many of us that are in therapy first have worked with people from all ends of the spectrum of dealing with what their gender identity is. And so if somebody calls us, and I know for myself, if someone is calling because they say they have real regret over something that they've done, knowing people that have had regret, that's not something I take lightly. And that's not something that, I would expect would be used against me or that when we're having conversations. And so I just think of, what she's done in that sense of putting people in places that really care about what's going on and framing it as something that is going against children. And let me just be clear, she wasn't a child.
Yeah.
And so she's, the whole I'm helping conversion therapy. Well, they use the term exploratory, which is not what we do when we explore our gender. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, how are you differentiating exploratory and exploring your gender?
Yep.
And then again, this is a person, an adult who reached out to another adult. This would be very different if this is the conversations that were happening between an adult therapist and a child. And that is what they claim that they're trying to stop and help is conversion therapy on young children.
Totally.
And that's not what was going on. And I do think that is something to mention here is that we think that an adult can have conversations like, hey, what is it going to mean if you change your mind or you decide something else later, and maybe not change your mind about your gender, but just the way you present. And again, our assumption here is you reach out for an issue. So you would assume that the therapist would be addressing the issues that you bring into the session. This isn't, I met them off the streets and all of a sudden the therapist says, cutting your hair is wrong. That is not what happened here.
It's not, I didn't hear that. So I don't know what
and also it's pretty reasonable for a therapist to acknowledge that for close to 30 years, your presentation was one way or your identity was one way.
That's right.
And then it suddenly shifted.
That's right.
Or that gender dysphoria was induced in your late 20s. That's something to get curious about. That's something that ought to give you some pause and that's not really something that ought to be off the table in a therapy session.
That's the whole point of therapy. You're supposed to make this person think about, isn't that why that person went to therapy? No, that is not why that person went to therapy. That person went to therapy undercover. Let's not forget that. This person went in with an agenda. So that to me was not even a real session because they already went in with an agenda. And like you said earlier, we don't know what questions they were actually asking, number one. Number two, but they're not going to have real therapy. So as far as I'm concerned, that's a setup. That was an actual setup. So that,
Yeah.
what does that say to me? So that says to me that,
But-
that this video is fake, and it's showing some fake stuff that's not fair to people who actually care. And I'm vouching for Therapy First. Okay. I am, because I know many of you in that program. I'm friends with that, with Therapy First. And I know you all, and I know the integrity you have. I know why you're coming at it. I know why it's important. All of it. I would not be sitting here with you today. So that's why that kind of stuff, as you see, I get so heated, because that person is doing a disservice to my community.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think that because in order for someone to make an informed decision when they interface with the medical system,
right,
they need to understand the nature of their distress. They need to understand the nature of their dysphoria.
Excellent.
And it's very different. It's different for each person. Gender dysphoria is a unique and individualized experience. There are a lot of there are many paths into gender dysphoria, being to the onset of gender dysphoria. And because of that, there are a lot of different ways to manage it. A medical approach is one way to manage it, but it's not the only way. And as you said, Buck, it ought not to be the first line intervention. I mean, just like psychotropic medication, for instance, when someone comes to therapy, the therapist is really there to do everything that they possibly can to resolve the distress that presents for that person. Before referring to or recommending something that is outside the realm of psychotherapy, such as a visit to a psychiatrist to talk about antidepressants, or speaking with an endocrinologist about hormones.
And one of the things, Buck, and I wanted to ask your opinion on this. I mean, we will say is that we don't have the full context of these sessions. So I'm obviously extrapolating and assuming things from what I'm watching. But one of the things that seems like there's a little bit of a conversation that we touch on is almost the fact of, hey, you might present a certain way, but you might not actually be understood a certain way. And it's almost presented as that's an insulting question to ask or to assume. But I think it really,
or something to bring up or help them become aware of and think about, mentalize about.
But and when I was doing this, Buck, like you were never confused that you were a transsexual, right? It's almost as if we got to make sure, we just want to let you know that just because you cut your hair, everyone in the world might not assume you're male. So what is it going to feel like to still be a trans person? And that's what I was somewhat hearing the therapist allude to. And it makes it sound as if he's denying someone's experience or saying that you're not going to cut it. But what happened to just the reality of, do you understand the expectations and the societal impacts that's going to happen from what's going on?
Boom.
All that, the weight of what you will be holding.
That's right.
And that there is a truth that you will be different from the sex that you are transitioning to move through the world appearing as. But this is something that affects not just people who transition. This is something that's true for all people who are gender nonconforming, or people who experience gender incongruence. And I think the way that the culture talks about gender nonconformity is really not helpful, because it makes it sound like it's about hairstyles and haircuts, clothing and outfits, or makeup, things that you can put on and take off. But there are people who are born and they are inherently gender nonconforming in the way that they, in their very essence, in their very being. their behavior, their mannerisms, their interests, the way that they, just they are just gender.
Well, that's why
nonconforming.
it's very important you say that, because we're not allowed to have gender nonconforming kids anymore. Immediately they're pigeonholed into the trans space. That's why I say I will not say trans kids. I will say kids who are struggling.
Or kids who are experiencing gender dysphoria. Or
That's
gender
right.
nonconforming kids. Trans
right.
kids is a particular framing to help people understand the difference that exists with those kids, the ways in which those kids are different from their same-sex peers.
Yeah, but this woman who did this video was really adamant at the end to say, oh, now we're going to not transition kids anymore. Like she went straight for the jugular, as far as I'm concerned, making it seem like, oh, now kids are not going to be able to transition. Mm-hmm. What are you talking about?
We all, as human beings, have blind spots. And I think with this particular issue, and just like Sara, I was trained in gender-affirming mental health spaces, mm-hmm. and I practiced within mm-hmm. the gender-affirming model for a while. And I think what I've come to really learn is that in this space, and also as a professional in general, you have to be very humble. And you have to be willing to evolve when you get new information, when you're presented with new information.
Yeah.
And you also have to recognize that you might have blind spots. So of course, she is not the professional, but the professional has a responsibility to acknowledge and be aware of their blind spots. But one of this person's blind spots is that young people who are gender nonconformity in youth is an indicator of growing up to be gay.
Excellent.
And that there's absolutely no way that we have as professionals to determine who is going to have their gender incongruence and gender dysphoria and gender nonconformity persist, and their cross-sex identity persist into adulthood, and who it won't. And that's a real, when you really consider that, you start to see just how much of a huge gamble we've been taking with young people's health and bodies, and just how really flippant the medical establishment has been when it comes to the health of young gender nonconforming people.
The real conversion therapy that's going on.
Right on. Right. Oh, that is conversion. You're not letting these kids grow into maybe they are trans. I can always go back to my own story. I was a gender nonconforming kid in the 60s and 70s. Yeah. Thank God. Right? Because I was that little skater kid that no one can tell if it was a boy or a girl. No big deal. I did not have a bad childhood. I had a kick-ass childhood. Amazing. I was happy. Like everything was great because nobody pushed me into a space.
When you say maybe they are trans, what you mean is maybe there's someone who would benefit from medical transition.
That's right.
But you're not saying maybe they are someone with who's born in the wrong body.
That's not, I wasn't born in the wrong body, by the way. I was born in this body that as an adult, right? I lived as a gay woman for many years of my life. And I thank the goddess above that I did, because this is what I keep telling young people, live some life. How can a 10-year-old, I'm going to pose this question to you, and I pretty much probably know the answer, but how can a 10-year-old not going through puberty understand their body and understand that they are a boy or a girl? They don't even understand that concept yet.
No, they don't. I mean, I think that was one of my biggest concerns is when my son, who had a 10-year-old, he's 10, who's transitioning, asked me, how do I know I'm not next? How do I know I am a boy?
To clarify, your son had a friend who was transitioning.
Yes. And so he was asking me, is just like, did they grow a vagina over the summer? What happens? How do I know I'm a boy? Like, when will that change? So we're really disorienting children.
Yes.
When we're saying this too, is that if you can be born wrong, they're sitting there like, oh, that's what's going on with me. Same. I was the anarchist, hot topic, like that's what was for me. And I hated anything that represented femininity or pink or the establishment.
So many women say that to me. You can't even imagine how many moms write me. I was a butch tomboy, and now I'm a mom with a husband and kids, and I have the most amazing life. And they would have transitioned me. I'm not kidding. I'm going to say hundreds of emails from people telling me that kind of stuff.
Oh, and just to piss off my parents, forget it. You know what I mean? Like that would have totally.
Yeah, and as for a lot of young people, it's there's these young people are trying to individuate and separate from their parents and trying to find themselves.
That's right.
For the ones who are naturally gender nonconforming, though, it's a real slippery slope. I mean,
yeah. But why don't they just leave these kids alone and let them figure it out? And if they're going to therapy takes a long time, people. Therapy isn't affirmation in 20 minutes, as you see the damage that stuff is doing. And again, I will tell you from my own experience, I interview tons of detransitioners. That is doing damage to a young generation. You got to go through at least 6 months to a year to even understand what's happening here. And you're going to a session maybe once a week, every other week. You start to learn about yourself. You start to see things about yourself. That's what therapy is all about. It's not affirming because a child says something. What is that? So why is that considered conversion therapy? If you're willing to spend more time with this child or this young person instead of just saying, how is that conversion therapy?
Well, I think in some ways, the mental health profession has really wanted to avoid the mistakes that it's made in the past when it came to how it treated gay people. And so the pendulum swung way too far in the other direction. There was an overcorrection for it. And there's there's also the way in which gender dysphoria has been really made to be synonymous with, or trans has been made to be synonymous with being gay or sexual orientation. When gender identity development is it's also not something that just belongs to trans people.
That's right.
This is what I was trying to get at before when I talked about gender incongruence. Gay people are gender incongruent.
That's right.
A lot of the time.
That's right.
And if we're now medicalizing gender incongruence or saying it's something that needs to be treated, gay adults really have to be at the table. It's not something that just belongs to trans people.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, the moment that it becomes something that's entirely associated with being trans is the moment when young gay people end up getting into harm's way with the medical system. Once a young person turns 18 and they're free to interface with the medical system. I don't keep my patients from interfacing with the medical system or keep them from transitioning. I may express concerns that I have about it, but I'm in no way going to encroach upon their self-determination or agency. Therapists don't control people.
No.
But it's also like a developmental flaw that we're introducing, being born in the wrong body. And I would really say that allowing kids to transition is allowing them to problem solve by killing themselves.
Wow.
I mean, I think when you do it older, I don't know about you. I mean, you even talked about your childhood with fondness.
Yes.
When kids talk about anything in their past, if they're going to transition, it is terrible. Everything about their part. So dead name, like this is again, the way we can kill ourselves by still living. And I think that's why a lot of kids find themselves not feeling it better, increased hospitalizations afterwards. It's because guess what? You're still here. And if we don't deal with what's so inherently wrong with you,
That's right.
hormones don't deal with that, what's so inherently wrong with you, which is not true. There's nothing inherently wrong with these people.
Right, exactly. I was just going to say that.
Brilliant.
There's nothing inherently wrong with them at all. There's something wrong with our society and our culture that doesn't make space for people who are gender nonconforming.
Absolutely.
And then that disapproval from society or from their environment is then internalized and they turn it on themselves.
Right.
And then therapists and doctors are saying, yes, if, the bullies were right, society was right, let's change you. There's something wrong about aspects of you that are fundamental to who you are, or there's something wrong with how you show up in the world.
Great points. Those are brilliant.
Let's make you fit in with hormones.
That's
and
right.
Normative dress and attire.
Oh my God, you two made such great points. Why are we not looking at it in a bigger scope? Like why are we not saying, okay, it's okay that you're gender nonconforming. I know the world is me. I know the world doesn't like butch girls or effeminate men. They don't like that. They get very weirded out. I had that experience as a young butch person. Oh, are you a boy or a girl? You're a freak. You're a weirdo. I had it all. I know it. I lived it. But that being said, I lived through it, right? But why are we not changing society's idea? Remember, stereotypes, people, stereotypes. We're regressing with trans instead of saying it's okay to be effeminate or it's okay to be masculine as a man or a woman and find your space. Or if you're transsexual or whatever, we'll move forward with that as you're an adult. But instead, we're not teaching the world to say, hey, wait a minute, not everything is black and white. And there's nothing wrong with these kids. And we're teaching them to hate their past. I'm sitting here going, don't hate your past. I love that girl. I brought that girl along for this ride. That's why I feel so powerful. So yeah, it's very distressing to me to see videos like this made about an organization that actually cares. Okay, Therapy First cares. There would not be 300 plus therapists involved with you at International if they didn't. Okay, so that being said, I really don't like when people do this kind of stuff instead of saying, hey, let me reach out to you, Therapy First, and let's have a conversation.
Well, yeah, right? Well, listen, I mean, this is something that's impacting our community.
Totally.
Okay?
Totally.
And it's something that we're here under the premise that 98% of children will live as their biological sex. That was still the premise that all of us repeat, irregardless, WPATH, everyone, they all state that. Yet this video makes children think that there are therapists out there that are out to harm them. And God forbid, they are just confused and have a thought about their hair or whatever and don't want to disconnect from their biological sex. And this video would tell them, nope, that's wrong. You can't even be confused about it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's why it's dangerous.
Mm-hmm. And as healthcare professionals, we have a responsibility to the, health and well-being of our patients. And so we take that very seriously.
I know.
If a medical path ends up not being right for someone, if it ends up being something that was greenlit for someone, but ends up actually ending up to be contraindicated for them, then the harm is really serious. I mean, we're not talking about small things. We're talking about the loss of one's breasts, the loss of one's sexual function, the total loss of functionality of one's endocrine system from getting their testicles removed. I mean, this is very serious stuff.
Yeah.
The fallout from a medical transition that was not right for someone is one of real medical trauma for that individual.
But don't you think it's weird?
Yeah,
go on,
there's
Sarah.
no other. I was just gonna say, there's no other things that I sign off of that will cognitively pause somebody.
Yeah.
A child,
Right,
let alone a
right.
child.
A child. Well, and then they keep saying, oh, the regret rate is low. I'm like, really? Let me show you. Number one. Number two, we're not operating on kids. Have you seen the 13-year-olds with top surgeries? So what? They're so gaslighting us, and they're so manipulating the way we're trying to get this message out here. I'm not saying people should not transition. I'm saying I really believe it's an adult space. I do not believe a child can make this choice. I can't go back. Thank God I don't feel like changing my mind on this, but it's not funny. Like, it's just not funny. I'm laughing because it's absurd that we would just affirm kids and that fast. It's sick. So you care. You too, your organization cares. That's what I want everyone to see out there. They're not telling people no. They're saying, let's figure it out. Let's take our time. Maybe you're this, maybe you're that. Your body isn't bad. You're giving positive feedback to these children who need to hear something positive. They don't need to hear I'm in the wrong body and I hate my dead name and I hate my parents.
They need to, right. I mean, that is repudiating parts of yourself. And when therapy ought to be about integrating parts of yourself, coming to a place of wholeness within yourself. And getting to a place where you can say and really mean it, I love me.
Yes,
I love myself.
Right.
And for some people that will, mean that they go on, that will include a transition, a medical transition. But from what I've seen, medical transition doesn't tend to be the right. It doesn't seem to be something that's clinically indicated for most of the population that I'm working with right now. These young people. The gender-affirming model applied to psychotherapy right now tends to actually not have much exploration. It sort of doesn't seem to be the case that the therapists working in the gender-affirming model are practicing with exploration and a developmentally informed orientation with with these young people, which is a problem. Like I said, we're healthcare professionals. We have a responsibility to the well-being of our patients, to help them understand themselves as comprehensively as possible so that they can make truly informed decisions for themselves. You can't make truly informed decisions for yourself in a medical system if you don't understand what it is that you're dealing with. And also it's affecting my community of gender nonconforming people. I'm I have a history of being gender dysphoric myself, of emerging into the world naturally much more feminine than my same-sex peers. You have your own experience with that. And I'm not okay with people like me being falling through the cracks and getting really significantly hurt and failed by the healthcare system.
And lied to by propaganda, right? I mean, this is what, just saying that regret is not a thing for anything is ridiculous. I mean, I had my tubes tied after 2 children, which, by the way, I regret, which is why now I have to go through IVF. Now, did I think that in the moment? No, I was pretty clear. But they gave me a lot of stipulations. I wasn't allowed to do that until my second child. And they definitely asked me and asked me and asked me. Had I come to them at 17 saying, oh, I know I'm not going to have children, I don't want them. They only did that after they thought that I did what was correct was by having children. So and again, so to say that regret doesn't happen, now does that mean that that option shouldn't be available to me? Of course not. But regret is a human experience. 18% of people regret their tattoo. Why would you think it would be right? Why would it be different with this? So to just act like, oh, it's so uncommon, that's just not that's not the world experience in
I will
general.
also say that for a lot of the people that I work with who experience regret or detransition, choose to detransition, there are a number of people who experience harm from this who either can't detransition or choose not to. But what I would say is, it doesn't even seem like regret is the right word for it.
No.
It seems
Yeah,
like grief
that's right.
is more the right
Yes.
word for it.
That's right.
Because regret occurs when you have a sense of agency.
That's right.
And a sense of choice.
Thank you.
And despite this area of healthcare being often made synonymous with areas of healthcare like abortion, what we've been talking about, young people who are still developing and may not understand fully the implications of the medical procedures that they're pursuing, and are actually being told by medical providers that this is what you need. Otherwise, if you don't, you're going to be at risk of suicide.
Right.
And that, that is not an environment that is one of choice.
Brilliant point. And doesn't that seem like conversion therapy right there? You're only giving you're converting. This kid could be gay, and we know that, right?
So when you've lost really significant and important body parts and functionality and elements of that are elements of your elements of your health that are really important for your longevity and your well-being over the course of your lifetime, like your body not producing a sex hormone.
That's right.
On its own. That, and you look back and you think to yourself, wait a minute, did I really choose this? I was being told that this is what I needed. That moment is one where you recognize that you were not in an environment, a medical environment that was one that was conducive of choice. It was one that, actually leads to an experience of grief, not so much regret.
And you're right. That's why they're more or less coming out saying they've been lied to then.
That's right.
Misled, trusted professionals, and ended up in a place where.
Well, let's be honest here. They don't know what they're doing. I transitioned 32 years ago. Okay. You all know I had vaginal atrophy. All kinds of crap happened to me. I was the first recorded case of that. La, 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 la. They didn't even know. I almost died. It was insane. So I wrote papers. I put it out there. They're still doing that. There's kids are still writing me, Trampa, I have this pain. I'm like, it's atrophy. And like, oh, the doctor didn't tell. I'm like, they're still doing that. This is still a very, very experimental space. And we're using little kids they don't even know what's going to happen to these kids in 10 and 15 years. What? So grief, because you're not really being told the truth, right? The truth would be, we don't know what's going on, which is what my doctor said to me. He's like, dude, I don't know what this is going to do to you. It's your choice if you want to do it, but I have no idea. And I took that choice. That's why I stand by it, because I was actually told by my doctor. Yeah,
I would love to go undercover and ask 10 affirming therapists how they discuss vaginal atrophy with their children and what they say.
That's right.
Because I can bet that 9 out of 10 don't even know what we're talking about. And that's what's really scary.
So scary, you guys. Oh, well, let's end here, because it's a lot of information, and I believe people are going to love this. I just want to thank you again for stepping up and having the conversation with me, because we need to have these public conversations, and we need to push back on people who are pushing, I believe, actually conversion therapy. And I believe that they're actually trying to get rid of places like you by saying these things about you, which we need you. We need you more than ever. And people on my channel will get it because they're all about what we're doing here. And so with that, do you guys, either of you people want to say something before we sign off?
Maybe Paul, just where they can go to.
Yeah, tell us, please.
Yeah, sure. If you're interested to learn more about Therapy First, you can go to therapyfirst.org, where we have resources for individuals and families. We have resources for individuals who are experiencing regret, grief, or medical trauma from transition. And we also have resources for clinicians. And you can join our membership for professionals and gain access to a whole host of benefits, including a membership retreat where you can just relax this summer. This is a very stressful environment that therapists work in. So we want to offer something restorative for therapists,
Right.
but also twice a week peer supervision groups to talk about cases and get support, as well as many other things. So
great. And Sara, you want to say anything?
No, I just want to reiterate that the group is really important, and there's so many of us. And I just think it's important to say that there's trans people on this group. There are, all different types of people who just want to make sure that kids are getting comprehensive mental health care, and that we're concerned that that's not what's happening. And this is the only area that it seems to really be going off the rails. So
yeah,
I agree. It's the only area in
you can't talk about
healthcare where you are so bullied by other professionals when you raise concerns. In no other area of mental health care would such uncollegial and unprofessional behavior be tolerated, much less accepted.
Wow. I appreciate you saying that, because I know I've interviewed some therapists who have to go in hiding. They have to put stuff over their face. I'm like, you're a therapist. You're not like a spy. Like, what's happening here? Like, this is so thank you for saying that, because a lot of people are going to see this. And this is what's happening in the therapy space, everybody. These people are being pushed into a space to have to affirm, because if they don't, they're considered bad therapists. It's out of control.
Yes.
So everyone, please visit therapyfirst.org. I'll put all the information. I'll put their information here. We'll put and we need to support this group really, really, really hard, because this is the one that's going to make change for all of us. And they're positive and amazing and uplifting. So with that, everybody, thanks for watching. Like the heck out of this video. Send it to everyone who needs to see it. And I'll see you guys all on the live on Wednesday. And thanks so much for supporting this channel.
Thank you.
Thanks, Buck.